Konnichiwa! In this video, we're going to be discussing section 10.7, Interpret the Discriminant. This begins on page 678. So in our previous video and previous section, we had discussed the quadratic formula. So the discriminant is going to be one piece of that quadratic formula, and we're going to interpret, whether it comes out to 0, negative, or positive, what that means for our graph. Alright, so in the quadratic formula, we have this b squared minus 4ac piece. That is called the discriminant. Alright, so b squared minus 4ac, and it is associated, of course, with our quadratic in standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Alright, so because the discriminant is under the radical symbol, the value of the discriminant can be used to determine the number of solutions a quadratic equation and the number of x-intercepts the graph should have of that function. Alright, so we are going to be looking at our three different options here and what that means. Alright, so b squared minus 4ac, let's go ahead and say it comes out positive. So it is greater than 0, it is positive. Alright, so it'd be something like, 4, 57, 117. Okay, that means that we have two solutions. Alright, so that means we have two x-intercepts, 2 points where our graph crosses the x-axis. Alright, and our next option here is if it comes out to 0. If b squared minus 4ac equals 0, that means I'm going to be taking the square root of 0. And then I'm going to be doing plus or minus the square root of 0. Well, if you add 0, it's the same as subtracting 0. So those two pieces there aren't going to result in a different number. So there's going to be one solution, and that means it is going to touch the x-axis. It's not going to go through it. Its vertex is going to just be on the x-axis, so its highest or lowest point there. Keeping in mind that our graph, of course, could open down. That is a possibility always. Alright, so our vertex is simply just on that x-axis. Alright, so there's one x-intercept. And then last but certainly not least, if b squared minus 4ac comes out negative, it is less than 0, that means there's no solution. So this is a very, very stereotypical ACT sort of problem in which they're going to, select the graph that has a negative discriminant. They're actually going to say that. And you need to know that if the discriminant is negative, it does not cross the x-axis. Alright, so there's going to be no x-intercept. And then, we kind of pop over here to the reading. Recall that in this course, solutions refer to real numbers. So, if you try to take the square root of a negative number, it's going to say like no solution, or error, or domain error. It produces a not real number, like not a tangible number. Alright, so we have issues with this one. We don't particularly care for it. Alright, so example 1. Use the discriminant. So here is my equation, here's my discriminant, and the number of solutions. So 2x squared plus 6x plus 5 equals 0. I need to find the b squared minus 4ac. Filling in all my pieces there, I end up with negative 4. Alright, and what that means, number of solutions, none. There are no solutions to that since it's negative. It's not going to cross the x-axis. Alright, x squared minus 7 equals 0. This one's a little bit tricky. I know what my a value is, so is b 7. B is not that negative 7. Alright, that's actually c, so what's b? B is 0. So I have 0 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 7, which equals a positive 28. So that means 2 solutions. Alright, part C here. I'm still filling in the values for A, B, and C. And I end up with 0. So that means 1 solution. That means it's going to touch my x-axis. Alright, example 2 here. Tell whether the equation has 2 solutions, 1 solution, or no solution. this really isn't any different other than it's not set equal to 0. It's not put in standard form. So you really only have, 2 lines of work. Put it in standard form and then do b squared minus 4ac to find the discriminant. Alright, so write out your equation. Put it in standard form. Make sure that we have x squared, x, and then our constant equal to 0. You compute b squared minus 4ac. And you get a positive 88. So what's a positive number mean? A positive discriminant means that there are 2 solutions. So I can go back to my equation here. It is a positive x squared, so I know that it's going to, I'm not sure exactly what it's going to look like, but it is positive. It opens up, and it's going to hit the x-axis like that. That's a super rough graph, but, I mean, that's what we're doing here, is we're trying to get an idea. So, here's a couple of guided practice for you. Please feel free to pause the video and check your solutions. Alright, here in example 3, find the number of x-intercepts of the graph. So here, instead of setting it equal to 0, it's written as a function, y equals, that's fine. We're really still not changing what we're doing. So, identify your A, B, and C here, and we put it into standard form, of course, replacing that y with 0. Since we're trying to solve for x, and use our discriminant here. So, b squared minus 4ac ends up with a value of -7. What happens when I get a discriminant of a -7? Can you take a square root of a negative number? Absolutely not. Things go wonky, so that means no solution. Alright, since the discriminant is negative, there is no solution. That's what you would write. Alright, which means there are no x-intercepts. Alright, so, of course, you can always check this using a calculator or Desmos.com. Highly recommend. If you type this into your top left button, the y equals, you would see that this beautiful parabola they end up graphing does not cross the x-axis anywhere, so that means there are no x-intercepts. Alright, here's another guided practice for you. Pause the video, see if your solutions match. Alright, here in example 4. The Centennial Fountain in Chicago shoots a water arc that can be modeled by the graph of the equation y equals negative 0.006 x squared plus 1.2x plus 10, where x is the horizontal distance in feet and y is the height in feet above the river. Alright, so does the water arc reach a height of 50 feet? If so, about how far from the north shore is the water arc 50 feet? So we are looking to replace my height, which they told us y is the height with 50 feet, and then we're looking for x, a horizontal distance there. So, write a quadratic equation. You want to know whether the water arc reaches 50 feet, so let's go ahead and let the height equal 50. Then write the quadratic equation in standard form. So, here is my equation. I substitute 50 in for my height there for y, and then I write it in standard form by subtracting 50 from both sides. Alright, so when I have a positive 10 minus 50, that produces negative 40, and of course 50 minus 50 cancels out and becomes 0 on the left, which is what we want. So then we can use the discriminant, even though, yeah, it's decimals, it's ugly, but it's fine. Alright, it comes out to a positive 0.48. So, the way to interpret that is because the discriminant is positive, there are going to be two solutions. So the water arc reaches a height of 50 at 2 points on the water arc. All right, so solve the equation, keeping in mind that they have already replaced that, what they originally had as that positive 10 with the y over here or the 50 over here. They went ahead and already, used one of our newer equations that we've substituted 50 in for already. All right, so we want to go ahead and solve this. And there's no easy way to factor it. There's an ugly decimal. I'm going to go for Old Faithful. In fact, I'm going to draw a heart on it because we love it so much and I have memorized it. We're going to use our quadratic formula. The opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so when I substitute in my a, b, and c values, keep in mind, you already did this work. You already found the discriminant. Don't rewrite all of it if you don't have to. Alright, so when we rewrite everything, substituting in our discriminant, our b value, and our a value, this is what we get, and then we actually work it out. There might be one or two more steps before you reach these two solutions. These two solutions. I'm pointing to the wrong thing. So we're hitting at about 42 and 158. Alright. So that means, yes, the water arc hits 50 feet above the water, and that is about 42 feet north and about 158 feet north from the North Shore. Alright, so here's a guided practice where they're changing up that problem just a little bit. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to send me an email or take advantage of those office hours. I look forward to hearing from you.